Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to start on today is called the Shape Design project. All right, and in this tutorial, we're going to introduce you to shapes and different ways that they can be used to create designs. There are a lot of new things that we're going to discover with this tutorial, so please go slow, think, and keep in mind what the end result will be. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a folder that has several portraits in it, of which you can choose one of them, or if you really want to, you can use a photograph of yourself. Okay, so you have to either use any of these portraits or a photograph of yourself. Also, everybody will be starting with this background mountain sunset base image in photopea, and so that's what I have right here. Also, you need to know that I stole this, or at least borrowed it, from this guy here. I'm not sure what his name is, but he does a pretty good job, although this tutorial he goes really fast, and I'm going to try to go a little bit slower. I did vary it quite a bit, or at least a little bit, in order to make a little more sense for my students, since you guys are beginners with photopea. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do in photopea, obviously, is open your background mountain scene that I've given you. Okay, and we're just going to note a few things. Number one is that we have the background scene as a pixel layer. All right, and because we're going to be using different types of layers today, we really need to be conscious of what our layers are, what type of layer they are. Okay. The next thing we are going to do is we're going to use our shape tool, which should be down here, and yours by default will be the rectangle tool. So you should see a rectangle tool down here. If I left click and hold, you'll see that we have several tools in here that are all shapes. The ellipse, the line tool, is also a shape tool, or a type of shape, parametric shape, custom shape, etc. But we're going to use the top three to create this design. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our rectangle tool, and we're going to create a perfect square. And you don't have to do this right in the middle of your document. You can do it anywhere, but you want to make it relatively big. So when I left click and I drag, you'll see that I can make this a super long rectangle, super tall rectangle. But if I hold down shift, again, I'm keeping the left mouse button down. If I hold down shift and drag, it will keep it a perfect square. Now, this is the most important part of this perfect square. You want to let go of your left mouse button first and then let go of shift. Now, what you see here are a bunch of polka dots, and that's because later on in this video I will show you polka dots. So let me just get rid of the polka dots. We're going to keep it there. You should also, by default, the stroke should look like that, should be X'd out, and your fill should be white. If it's not white, I think maybe your default is red. So let's turn it red for now. Okay, so don't get confused by that. You should have something that looks similar to this. So a red square that you can then, with your move tool, move around your scene. Now notice what happened here. It created a shape layer, okay, called shape 1. It also has this thumbnail with that little box. It looks like a bounding box with 4 little squares on each corner. That tells you, it should tell you, at least you should start to learn, that this is a shape layer. And shape layers work like a vector graphic. Okay, we have bitmap graphics and we have vector graphics. We went over that a little bit. So what does that mean? Well, it has different editing properties. You can use different tools to do different things with it. We'll just keep it at that for now. So we have this vector square that we can move around our scene. And the first thing we want to do is turn it to white. So you can see, because I have my move tool, all of my submenu options are geared towards the move tool. But if I click back on that rectangle tool, you'll see that change dramatically. Okay, the first thing to notice is that we have a shape, and you saw this before when we did the pen tool tutorial. Okay, you have color here, you have a stroke here, and a stroke is basically an outline around the shape, and we'll get into that in a little bit, and a bunch of other things that we really aren't going to worry about today. Couple things. It's interesting. I used to have the ability to do some things in properties, but we no longer do. That's okay, no big deal. So what we want to do is we want to change the color of the shape to white. So if I go up to my fill, change it to white, and if you don't have these options down here, you might have had something else selected, so you have to click on the red, and then you have to click on the white when it comes up. We click it, and we change it to white. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to get our move tool, and we're going to want to center this perfectly in our image. So the best way to do that, if you see these icons up here in our submenu for the move tool, these are alignment tools that allow you to align things very quickly. Okay, the problem is if you just start clicking align, it doesn't know what you're trying to align with. And you saw that pop-up, it said select multiple layers. So because our canvas is full of this background layer, if we hold down Control and click on the background layer, we now have 2 layers selected. And by the way, if you get your move tool and you now move things around, you're going to move them together. Okay, so you can always select more than one layer at a time, but we don't want to move it around. I was just showing you that we have 2 layers selected. But now that we have both of those layers selected, and we went shape first, then background, we can go up to our center vertical, or excuse me, center horizontally tool, click it, and it'll center it horizontally. Then we go to our center vertically button and click that, and now our square should be perfectly centered in the middle of our background. Okay, now that we have this shape layer, we want to rotate it. We want to turn it into a diamond. So the best way to do that, and the way to make it technically perfect, is to go to Edit, Transform, Rotate. And when we do that, we have all of these numbers up here. I won't go over what all of them mean. You can probably figure out most of them. But what we're looking for is this little icon right here that tells us rotate. And we also know it's rotate because of the little itty bitty circle at the top right, which means degrees. So you all hopefully know we have 360 degrees. If we want to rotate something a quarter of the way around, it is 90 degrees, right? Because 360 divided by 90 is 4, and 1 into 4 is a quarter, and I'm getting too far into math. So let's just keep it simple. We don't want to rotate it a full 1/4. We want to rotate it a half of 1/4, or 1/8, which is 45 degrees. So as soon as I do that, I hit my check mark. Now we have a perfect diamond right in the middle of our background. Okay. So now the next thing we want to do is we want to duplicate our shape layer. You all know that you should all know that you can drag it and drop it into this icon down here. But the other thing you can do is hit Control J. All right. I hit Control J and made a copy of that layer. Okay, now we want to move that shape 1 copy down below shape 1. So we have shape 1 copy. And we're going to rename this. And we're going to rename this the name of the blend mode that we're going to use, which is hidden in this button here. We're going to name it Overlay. Overlay. Okay, and then we're going to go into our blend mode and we're going to try to find Overlay. There, we found it right there. And now we turn that into an overlay. It's hard to see right now, obviously, because it's hidden behind shape 1. But if I get my move tool and I left click and hold and I start dragging right and then hold down shift, it'll keep it in a straight line. If I don't hold down shift, I'm going to go all over the place. But again, holding down shift keeps things in a straight line. And you can move this as far as you want. We sort of want to keep it compact, so I'm going to move it to about right there. Also, one more thing, what will make this project a little easier, I should have said it before, is if you have snap on, it will help align things a little bit better. So make sure the check mark is to the left of snap underneath your view menu. Okay. Now we're going to duplicate that again. So Control J, and we're going to move that over first. And again, I moved it, I'm holding down shift, and I'm sort of guessing at the distance. Again, I'm getting it close. I'm looking at this little V up here, trying to make sure the V's are very similar in width. And then we're going to name this overlay Soft Light, S-O-F-T-L-I-G-H-T. And we're going to change that blend mode to Soft Light. All right, you'll see that change just a little bit right there. And now comes the time where you need to select which portrait you're going to use. I already know the one I'm going to use. I like the cute little babies. So we're actually going to, instead of open, we're going to use open and place. I know you haven't done this before, but it's right under the file menu, open and place, and it'll open up your Explorer. I'm going to go to the correct project, ShapeDesign, Portraits, and I'm going to choose this cute little baby right here. Click Open, and it will load it and place it. What we do want to do is we want to hit the check mark when that comes in. That's fine. We want to also make sure that's above shape 1. So if when you placed it, it wasn't above shape 1, you need to do that. All right. The next thing we're going to do is something brand new that you haven't done before. We are going to right click on Portrait 7 and we're going to say clipping mask, which when we do that, it will clip it. See this arrow? That means clipping to the shape below. So it automatically, almost like a mask, it masked everything out in that image that wasn't that shape. Okay, and from here you can do a lot of things. With your move tool, you can still move it around. The pixels weren't deleted, they're just masked out. All right, they're clipped. Okay, we can also transform this if we want the baby to fit into that diamond better. So if I go to Edit, Free Transform, grab the bottom right, and again, very important, we're not squashing and stretching, especially little babies. Okay, we're holding down Shift. Actually, in this one, we want to hold down Alt-Shift, which will allow us to scale uniformly, keeping the width and height proportions the same until we get down. And we don't want to go past the top and bottom corners of our diamond because it'll leave little white stripes there. I'm going to go just beyond the diamond. Let go of the mouse button first, and then let go of Alt-Shift and hit the check mark. And now, once again, if I want to center this baby a little bit, I can move it over that way. And I think that looks pretty good right there. Now, the next thing we're going to do is add a few more design elements using our Shapes tool. So this one, we wanted to use the Line tool. And when I click on the Line tool, you'll see we have some of the same options up here in our submenu. In this case, we want to have a fill of white. We want to make sure our stroke is out or X'd out. And then when I click, well, something tells me this is going to be super big. No, I click and drag. I'm going to make a vertical line that's pretty long, not quite the height of the entire image, but it's pretty long. And then you'll see it created shape 2 here, similar icon, and we have a white line. All right. Now we want this line's angle to match the angle of the edge here and here and here and here in our diamond. So to do that, once again, we do a transform. So I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Rotate, and once again, that degree is 45. I hit Enter, check mark, and now we can move that little design element over our canvas. But we don't want this line going across our cute little baby's face, do we? No, we want it to be below shape 1, which is our clipping layer, and above the soft light and the overlay. And we're just going to move it into place here. Also, by the way, when you have your move tool in this project, make sure you have auto select off. So you're controlling what you're moving and what you're selecting based upon which layer you have selected. Otherwise, you could accidentally select the wrong layer, move it, get frustrated, and have to hit Control Z a bunch of times. Okay, so I'm just going to move this. And these design elements, by the way, are up to you. You can do as many as you want. You can even rotate them a little different if you want. This is the sort of design, personal creativity portion of this project. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control J to duplicate it. I'm going to move it over a certain amount and down a little bit. In fact, I think I'm going to move my first one up quite a ways, and then we're going to move this one similarly about right there. And then I'm going to duplicate that, Control J, to get a third line in which we're going to move. You can do whatever you want with this, to be honest with you, as long as it looks good to you. I'm going to move this down and over to the left. Again, I'm trying to keep the spacing in between these very similar, but again, that's going to be up to you. All right. If I want to get that blue outline off of my line, I can just click my background layer and leave it at that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is put a dotted line around the outside of our initial of our baby square, all right, our baby diamond. Okay, and to do that, we're going to once again go back and get our rectangle. And this time, I'm going to make a square. I'm going to make it pretty big, and we can alter it later. So I'm going to hold down Shift and that looks big enough. And once again, we have a fill with white. We have no stroke. This time we're going to change that, all right? Before we change that, so we can see what it's going to look like, once again, I'm going to hold down Control and click on my background layer. I have both layers selected. Get my move tool, center this, all right? And then once again, we're going to do an edit, transform, rotate. And once again, you guessed it, 45 degrees. Oh, that happened. Why did that happen? X. That happened because, again, I had the background layer still selected. So let's make sure we just have shape 2 selected before we do the transform. Otherwise, that scared me actually a little bit. Rotate 45 degrees. Enter, check mark. And now I'm going to scale this down so it's just a little bit wider than our baby diamond. All right, transform, scale, or you can do free transform. And again, grab one of the corner boxes, hold down Alt-Shift, Alt and Shift at the same time so it scales to the center of our scene. There, and I'm going to leave it just with a little bit of margin outside of that baby. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to change that. So we have to go choose our shape tool again. We're going to change the fill to nothing by clicking the red X, and we're going to change our stroke to white. And you're going to see a huge, big, thick line. All right. Well, the problem here is it's way too big. It's 49 pixels. So we're going to grab our little slider, and we're going to take that down. So that's a nice little thin sort of design element thickness. All right, that looks pretty good there. And then we're going to change it from a fixed line to a dotted line. So this button down here will turn it to a dotted line. All right. And you can change the number of dashes if you want. What if I change it to 50? I'm just curious. Ooh, too many. 4. Oh, it's 4 and 2. It looked like there was a space in there, which is still a little bit weird for me, but we'll just do that. Let's just leave it there so we don't get messed up. All right, and then if I click on my background, you'll be able to see that dotted line around there. It's a cool little element. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to duplicate the shape layer that is being used with this clipping group right here. Control J. And I'm going to pull that down and get it away from shape 1. Okay, and what we're going to do here, because it's the exact same size as the shape where the baby is, the diamond, we're going to again grab our shape tool, get rid of the fill, hit the red X, add the stroke, turn it to white, and again, way too thick, so we're going to take that way down just so we have this cool little white outline around the outside of our diamond. And that's it. That looks good there. Again, I'm going to click on my background so I get rid of that little blue line around there. All right. Couple more things and we'll be done. It's almost up to 20 minutes on this video. Okay, and so the final shape we're going to use is the Ellipse tool. And we're going to use the Ellipse tool. And we're going to do it pretty big. So I'm going to go way up here. I'm going to left click and I'm going to hold down Shift. And I want to make this thing go all the way around pretty much everything, okay? And because we don't have a fill right now, because that was left over from the last operation we did, and we only have stroke, that's fine. But we want to center this circle just like the other items in our design. So again, I'm going to hold down Control, select background, grab my move tool, do the centering operation again, see if that works. That works for me. And then we're going to just make sure you're only on the shape layer and not the background layer. I'm going to select my ellipse tool and I'm going to change once again the type of line that we have to dots. All right, we have these dots here. Now I want to make these dots a little bit bigger, so I'm going to increase them by dragging that slider. I'm going to make these pretty big. I don't really want any overlapping. So, and I don't want them going, that's close enough. Yeah, we got too little close together right here, but that's okay. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my move tool because I want to scale this down. I feel like it's too close to the top and bottom edges of my canvas. So I'm going to grab my free transform control button while I have my move tool. And again, I'm going to click on one of the top corner buttons, hold down Alt Shift, and scale it down. And in fact, when I did that, I was watching and these two circles here merged, and I sort of liked that. So let's do that and click the check mark. All right. And then I'm going to uncheck transform controls. So that doesn't really look very good. It looks a little bit cheesy. So, but we're going to use those circles to do something that I think is pretty cool. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to convert our shape into raster, all right, into pixels. So when I right click on shape 2, I'm going to go to rasterize. Now I'm dealing with just a pixel layer. You can see that shape icon went away. And then we're going to add a gradient overlay. All right, so color overlay, gradient overlay. Under effects over here, gradient overlay. And I've already done this before, so my gradient turned out perfectly. But what I want to do is I want to actually sample colors from my background scene to create this gradient. So if I click on my color bar here, and I move this window up so I can see, and then I choose the yellow portion or the right portion, and then I click on the color picker here, I can actually go over into my scene, and you can see as I click around, it will take on that color that's in my scene, which is pretty cool. But I want this nice yellow, and that's a little dull, but it's okay. What if I go to this yellow here? A little bit more vibrant. I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to click on the orange, and once again, click on this square here, the color picker. And again, I can click around my image to choose something that is similar to what we have. So in this way, we're keeping our color palette similar, right? We don't want like bright green in here. It wouldn't make any sense. It would hurt the eyes. So we want this color palette that's used throughout this imagery to be similar and pleasing to the viewer. All right, so that looks pretty good there. I'm going to use that one. Okay. Click OK. And then what I did was I changed the angle, so it sort of matched everything else we have here. We have all these angles, these diagonals, including the sun right here, which is really the source of these colors in this image, and the yellow and the oranges. So I changed the angle here just by rotating this. You can see as I do this, the gradient rotates around. So I'm just going to keep it at a similar angle there. Click OK. And now we have in our layer this effect over here. And what I want to do is I want to change our blend mode. The problem is when you have an effect on a layer like that, the blend modes don't seem to work. All right, so there's what we do to get rid of our effect, if we're good with it, is I can right click on that and I can go rasterize layer style, which will get rid of that effect. It'll lock that gradient into those pixels. Okay, and then we can play with blend modes. And one thing I like to do just to play is if I select that button and I just click on normal, I can use my down arrow on my keyboard to toggle through all of these blend modes. And then I'm just looking for something that I like. I think that's pretty cool, maybe a little bit too vibrant. I want something a little more subtle, but I do want to see all of the circles. So I don't like that. Too much, too dark, too different, too many different colors. I'm going to toggle back through, and we're going to settle on one somewhere around in, where to go? Oh, sorry guys. Let's just do this one. That'll work. Color dodge, okay? But I really don't like the circle design too much, so we're going to play a little bit, and we're going to add a filter. You can add whatever filter you want. I'm actually going to add a filter distortion and do a ripple. And we get this little dialog box up, and it'll break that monotonous circle apart. You can take the amount down. You can change to different sizes. And so it makes it sort of more randomized, but still a cool design element. And then the last thing you can do with this, you can add a couple filters if you want. I might take the opacity down a little bit so it sort of takes that power away, and we keep our eyes right here. We want our eyes in the image of where this baby is, okay? And then the very last thing, and I promise it's almost a 25-minute tutorial, we are again going to force the viewer's eye to focus towards the center of our image. And to do that, we're going to use our trusty friend, the sponge brush, okay, in which you already know we can desaturate and saturate. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this to saturate, I'm going to make my brush pretty big. I'm going to make the hardness very small, so we have a very soft edged brush. And I want to make sure I'm on my background layer, and I'm going to paint, and I'm going to bring some of these colors out just a little bit. All right, and then I'm going to do the opposite outside of my circle. I'm going to desaturate outside of my circle. I'm trying to stay as close to outside of the circle as I can. And again, this is a technique that can help draw the viewer's eye using color right into the middle of our scene. Okay, and that's it. I do want you to save this as a PSD file because I would love to open at least some of them up and look at the layers that you use to create these things. Technically, I'm not a big fan of having this line sticking out well past this. I might move that or do something just to make this look a little bit better. It's a little distracting, but overall, pretty cool design. If you did this for a family friend or something, they'd be very happy with the result. So that's it. Make sure you save your name correctly, or save your file with the correct file name, and save it as a PSD with all of your layers in it, and submit it to the project on time.